Okay, here we go. Weekly update number 2. I said I'd stay accountable, so here I am. This week I am going to talk about 3 things again, which is going to be the pattern of things, I think. First of all, the Anthropic breach. Secondly, a bit more about those bad agents, because that story is continuing. And then thirdly, I'm going to talk about the AI Leadership Units, which is something which is really interesting and something I'm going to be starting to deliver soon as well. Right, so starting off then, the Anthropic data breach. Was it a data breach? I'm not sure. Basically, what happened was Anthropic, one of the big AI labs, they own and manage and run Claude. It was spotted by a user on a subreddit, r Claude AI, that Google had indexed some chats and artifacts from Claude. So that was basically loads of chats which had information in, some personal, some data, various bits of information which weren't really designed for public view, had found their way onto Google in the search index. So this is very similar to what happened with OpenAI. There was a big breach last year. I think that was a few 100,000 users' data. So that was much, much larger, got a lot more kind of news coverage, etc. But it is another example that whilst we might feel safe chatting away in our large language model chat interface of choice, that actually, they can be pretty leaky. Stuff can get out, and it will do. And my understanding is with this that actually for paid plans and the enterprise accounts, this wasn't an issue. But if you're not on those or you're not sure, it is worth checking your privacy sharing settings before you go and share a link to a chat. Is it really a data breach? It kind of is, but kind of isn't. Remember, Google's just indexing publicly available content. And we just need to remember, don't we, that the web is an open standard. So if you publish something on a URL, which is open, there is a chance it can be found and indexed by a search engine or, of course, found by other users. So there are some concerns around this. I don't know if it's necessarily specifically a breach. More, it's just people have been using this and not understanding the potential impacts of sharing content from a chat. I actually saw one which was an artifact, and it said that it had been produced by an NHS trust, and that kind of discussed some strategy and policy stuff. Now, I can't verify if that was actually produced by someone from an NHS trust or whether someone else had just built something in Claude and shared it that referenced the NHS. But either way, it's just a bit concerning. So it's made some news this week, and I think it's just a timely reminder for us all just to think about what we're creating, in which tools, and then, kind of where we're sharing it if we are. So that was the Anthropic breach. Next up then, bad agents. Where to start? This story just keeps on giving, doesn't it? It sort of runs and runs. It started now a couple of weeks ago where OpenAI said that whilst trading and testing kind of their frontier model, Sol and some other more advanced model apparently, that basically got out of the sandbox environment and it started sort of attacking things or hacking into other systems. The first news that broke on this was related to Hugging Face, which is kind of like a bit of a marketplace repository for models, etc. So it's kind of, and I mentioned this in my video last week, it's kind of a big player in one regard, and I'm absolutely sure there's lots of conversations back and forth all the while between Hugging Face and OpenAI and the other labs. But in this instance, OpenAI's model has decided to go rogue, and it sort of cheated and succeeded, basically, in trying to access something. It's goal-orientated. It was told to do something. It's a super powerful agent. It's going to find a way. And it did. And that's sort of an expected outcome, really. But it's a worry as well for us all, and not only the big players, but smaller organisations too. There are some stories out there that suggest it basically just found some plain text passwords on the open web, and it used those to gain access to the system. Now, again, I can't verify that, but it does point towards this kind of major problem that we've sort of stored up for the future, really, and that is that, crikey, on the internet at large, there are usernames, there's passwords, API keys, all littered across the open web. They're in plain sight of these models. Sometimes these bits of information are sort of obfuscated from human view, from human sight, but these models are going to find them. It could all start with just a shared Google Doc from 10 years ago that's got a link available on the web still, which links back to talking point 1 about the Anthropic breach. And then maybe inside that Google Doc, there's a link to a spreadsheet. And inside that spreadsheet, there's a list of email addresses. That's just some information that maybe you shared a while ago and you shouldn't have done, but you did. But now is when it becomes a problem, because that could be the start of a model finding that email address list and then looking out to the rest of the web to see if it can find some breach passwords which exist in loads of repositories, and then match it to an email address. And hey presto, they might be able to find their way in through various types of attack. It could be just brute force. It could be cycling passwords that it's aware of that email address has used in the past. So, I mentioned Troy Hunt the other week. It seemed like I'm a bit of a fanboy of his, but he runs a website called Have I Been Pwned, which is all about data breaches and data that is available on the web and that people are buying and selling and using and hackers are using. Well, of course, if that data is available to humans, then naturally these models, as powerful as they are now, they're going to be able to use that as well. There's stories really around the web now for a couple of years about vibe coding projects, and I love vibe coding projects. I think they're fantastic. They're a real cool tool, right? You can now just from prompting create a piece of software, which is massive for non-technical people and technical people alike. The challenge with that is there has been numerous stories, lots of stories of things like secrets. Be that API keys. Be that usernames and passwords, being exposed in those vibe-coded projects. And they're out there on the web, they maybe not be maintained, or the people that have developed them and published them aren't aware of these risks. And then what we will find as these models get out there into the wild, that actually they can just use that and they can run riot around your infrastructure. They can get in to use your API keys to actually run workloads themselves, etc., etc. So these are like major concerns. And I think, it's time to get your house in order if you haven't, if that's even possible. Can we realistically sort everything out that's been littered around the web for the past 30 years? Time will tell. This story then progressed yesterday because Anthropic have now come out and said, yeah, hands up, you know what, when we were testing, one of our models decided to go and do some hacking as well. And they actually only spotted this seemingly after their major competitor, OpenAI, saying, hands up, one of our models has been out there hacking and doing nefarious things. So it feels a little bit reactive rather than proactive. And it does strike me that these large AI labs should probably be a little bit more proactive around security and guardrails and guidance, etc., of these models. But ultimately, they're also trying to break down barriers. They're also trying to do things that haven't been done in the past. So they're taking risks. Unfortunately, they're taking risks, on the open web and with other people's systems now. It's not just internally to their labs. These things are getting out of a sandbox environment and finding their way onto the web. And that could mean they get access to other systems. And they have proven to be capable of doing that. The 2 out of the 3 targets that Anthropic notified weren't even aware of the hack. So they didn't know that their service had been attacked by these models. Now, I don't know whether that's because their infrastructure, security, reporting, etc. is not up to scratch, or whether these models have done it in such a subversive way or secretive or, what's the right word? Silent way that they've managed to get in and it's not appeared like a hack as well, which is another concern. Agentic means giving agency to something. So if you have set up a goal for an agent to go and achieve, then it's going to find the best way of doing it. And in that concept lies a lot of power, but clearly a lot of concern and risk as well. Now, a bit of the narrative around this is that actually, is this a model issue? Is this about these advanced frontier, super capable models doing bad things? Or is it actually more of a security and infrastructure issue? Because these models are just doing what they've been designed to do, right? They're actually following instructions. They're finding solutions to a problem that has been given to them. And they're ultimately governed by their power. And they have a lot of power now. So actually, is it more the case that it's not the model itself, it's the infrastructure wrapper around it when these AI labs are testing them, i.e. the sandbox, the infrastructure, the security, the policies around all of that, because the model was actually just doing what it was designed to do. I actually saw a post from, I think it was this morning or maybe yesterday, from Amjad Masad, who's from Replit. He's kind of the CEO and the builder of Replit, someone I kind of respect. And he basically said that, sandboxing, he said it, I've got it here, sandboxing is one of the hardest infrastructure problems in computing. He's clearly right about that, because we've seen, haven't we, from these models getting out, that it's hard to control them. And Replit actually published a quite reactive post, I would suggest, about their approach. And I'll pop the link in below. So interesting, these rogue models. Old Golden Locks out there in the White House, he said yesterday, I saw something from him, it was pretty light touch, but he said that he's considering AI controls after the hacking incidents. It's not immediately clear to me how he's going to do that. I'm not sure shouting at them will work, if I'm honest with you, but we'll see. There's also a bit of skepticism, I think, from me and a lot of other commentators and people around the internet, news, article writers, etc. Actually, is this kind of a bit of, there's no such thing as bad PR going on here? And have these big labs just priced into what they're doing the fact that something going rogue and hacking is actually kind of part of the story? And it's part of building up this groundswell of interest and enthusiasm about these things. And then they can come out with another story saying, we've got guardrails in place now and it works. I don't know. But there's shareholders to please. There's a lot of investment going on. There's IPOs coming up. So, maybe treat all of these stories with a little bit of healthy skepticism as well. Right, so that's rogue agents again. Last thing I want to talk about today is the AI units. So these are the AI Leadership Units, which were launched in the UK a few months ago. What they are is short, sharp training units for senior leaders, anyone that's a leader in an organisation. So at that level, doing a kind of skills gap fix. Really quickly, short, sharp, 32 guided hours, hands-on and practical, and just upskilling around strategy and opportunity, adoption, procurement and governance, delivery and organisational transformation. I've just read those because they're the 3 units that are available. They are all funded, so depending on your organisation, that can come from like Skills Levy and all that kind of stuff. I'm actually starting to deliver these for 2 of my corporate clients after the summer break, which is really, really interesting because whilst I do a lot of commercial training, which can be quite customised, be quite bespoke to that organisation, these are kind of government designed AI units. So they're not a full apprenticeship. There's not all of the tracking. There's not kind of the endpoint assessment or anything like that. There's a skills test at the end. There's a bit of validation from the employer. But ultimately, if you are over the age of 19, you're in a leadership position and you're in full-time employment at an organisation, you can get this funded AI Leadership Units training. As I say, 32 guided hours, all online. And I'll put a link in the comments below or below the video to some more information on that. So if anyone is interested in that, give me a call, drop me an email, what have you, and I can talk to you about how we can put that together. They're really flexible and they're kind of stackable as well. So the way that I'm running it with a couple of organisations is we're fitting it around like their organisation's sort of workloads and how their teams work. So for one, we're doing it as over a 2-week like short, sharp period. For another one, doing it over 5 weeks. So 1 day per week, 4 or 5 weeks, doing the unit, and they're done. And then individuals can do 1, 2, or 3 of them. They can stack them up, and they can do them independently or as a full series. It's absolutely fine. I think they're really good. Apprenticeships sometimes get a little bit, certainly the senior ones, a little bit of bad press because they're not always managed in the right way. But I think with these, because they're pretty quick, you can get going with them quickly, draw the funding down, get them delivered, and really upskill leaders, which I think is really, really important as AI adoption kind of continues. Okay, that's it. That is my weekly update number 2. Today, I am finishing up work for a week to go camping on the east coast of England. The weather has been beautiful for the past 2.5 months in the UK. And as of Monday, it's going to be rainy and windy. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, have a good day. Weekly update number 2.